And welcome into the Tuesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Hope everybody's off to a wonderful start. A little bit of a cold start to this morning. Joe, we're getting towards the time of the year where you walk outside, particularly at the time we do, and it's just a little too cold for me. Don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, I like fall. I like, I guess what you would call football weather.
Sure.
So, I'm good with 40s, 50s. I can live with that. But, yeah, I mean, today it said 39 when I got in the car. So,
Not
we're
acceptable.
about to have our first frost probably at some point. That's I agree. I'm with you. But I think that the rest, actually, we get to Saturday. It's supposed to be 73 and sunny, So, I mean, we still can enjoy some of this stuff.
No doubt about it. How we doing? What's going on? Welcome back to our land here.
Yeah, thanks. Doing fine. Enjoyed some Todd Downing offensive. I mean, everybody seemed to think that the Jets offense was better with Todd Downing calling plays, and then Aaron Rodgers throws a pick, and then blames Mike Williams for the pick.
Yes.
So
an impressive Hail Mary that Todd Downing called last night.
It was a perfect play call at the right time. Like he had the exact timing right on that call. Wow. Todd Downing, good call, man.
Dialing up.
Aaron Rodgers is incredible at those, by the way.
He is.
I've seen that before. But, yeah, without that, I don't know. I don't know if it would have been as good a game. They look a little better, but just not quite good enough, man. 2-4.
2-4 for those Jets, which I'm sure will sit well with everyone in New York / New Jersey today. I'm sure it'll be nice and calm and rational discussion up there.
Yeah, some bad kicker stuff going on in this game, too.
Pretty awful.
Yeah, my goodness.
I don't know if the wind was swirling. If I was a kicker, I'd certainly blame it on the wind, whether there was wind or not, with some of those kicks that we saw last night.
I hope there was the biggest gust of wind ever.
I hope so.
A couple of these.
Just not very good. Nick Keyser, what's going on? How are we doing?
Morning. Yeah. Well, the cold weather also warrants one specific flavor for my coffee, and that's pumpkin spice.
Oh, we reached that time of the year?
Yeah. And look, I'm not like your PSL white girl fan over here for the coffee drinkers out there, but no, I just like the creamer. That's about all that I do.
I'm not a huge pumpkin spice guy.
It's all right.
I think I've had it a couple times. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be okay if I never did that again.
Just not good.
Yeah.
I mean, other than the fact that it tastes bad, it's fine.
Yeah. Other than that, it's great. Not a huge pumpkin spice guy. We got a whole lot to get into on the program today. Of course, we're going to get into the Titans, some of the aftermath of Brian Callahan's comments from yesterday with the Titans dropping to 1-4. We'll get into that. The Vols taking on Alabama at Neyland Stadium this weekend. Do they have any hope whatsoever to fix this offense that's been broken the last couple of weeks? Vanderbilt marching on to a path to the postseason. We'll take a look at that. And the Nashville Predators still in search for win number 1 on the season. They'll take on the Seattle Kraken tonight. We'll get into all of that on the program today. We do begin with the Titans and Brian Callahan, his press conference from yesterday. Titans are obviously in a bad spot. They're 1-4, and just a loss to Indianapolis on Sunday that we detailed a lot yesterday on the show. Just a very winnable game against a very bad defense, and the offensive output that you were able to put up, particularly in the passing game, to me was just not acceptable. I thought it was brutal to watch on Sunday. In an NFL game, you generate 95 yards of passing. That's just not good, and that's not acceptable. And there's a lot of talk about that and how the passing game improves yesterday. But Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com did have a line of questioning for Brian Callahan yesterday that I thought was pretty interesting. Here was that exchange between PK and Brian Callahan.
No, I don't think that's the case. No. I think there's a lot of things that he can do better. Then there's things that I can do to help him better. And then there's around him can play better too. I think that we're really close. There's a lot of things that we do well, and there's a lot of things that we just haven't quite gotten over the hump on when it comes to losing one-score games. Lost 3 of them now, where we're in position to have a chance to win, and we haven't done it. And I don't know that that's necessarily it's not all a will thing either. There's things that I can do better to help them, and just haven't been there yet. And again, we're tight, we're close, and we got to play better. There's no doubt, and he's got to play better. But there's things that I think are encouraging and positive about it as well.
So that was Brian Callahan yesterday. Went on to ask about.
I would have liked to hear Kuharsky's question there.
Went on to ask about whether or not you feel like the decision is basically made at this point. Is, and there's an interesting piece at paulkoharski.com about that as well. We'll find that clip here in just a second. But just whether or not the decision basically has been made, and Callahan's answer to that, I thought, was pretty interesting, and which we'll get to that here in just a few minutes. But bottom line is, we've reached the point of the year. You're 1-4. The quarterback play has been so bad that I think the patience argument that we've talked about a lot with this, a lot of people, certainly the fan base, and I'm starting to wonder within the organization, how much patience is left with Will Levis, with as bad as it's been. We've asked this question all year long, Joe, and it's been difficult to come up with an answer because you could point to several different examples around the league. How long is too long? How quickly is too quickly to give up on the quarterback, right? It's an inexact science that is tough to find out in this league. How long is too long? How quick do you give up on a quarterback? And I wonder if the answer towards that is starting to shift. And if the scenario that we brought up that seems probable at this point of them being 1-6, is that going to be the point of no return after the Detroit game?
Yeah, it might be. I got to say, I totally disagree with Koharski here. So he, and I look forward to arguing with him on our show tomorrow. So he is taking this leap that because of this game plan and all these checkdowns, the Titans have, that's the verdict. That suggests the verdict is in. I think the verdict is in when they stop playing him, right? Now, maybe this had something to do with the arm stuff. Again, I must be taking crazy pills because, I think the beginning of the game was setting up a touchdown that they got. I think that's what they did. And I think it was actually really smart. And then, the rest of the game, it was ugly. But I don't I think there's also, I saw TD asking questions about conservative play calling and stuff like that. And I get that, but that's what they did well, right? I don't think anything they did with this game plan says, yeah, we're out on Levis. Then don't play him anymore. What am I missing here?
Well, you say that's what they did well. What did they do well on offense?
Right. Well,
they threw for 95 yards.
No, like I said, they ran the ball well. That's what they did.
Sure.
No, of course, they didn't pass it well. They did nothing. They couldn't.
I think
pass.
That's what they're talking about. You're throwing the ball, and when you're completing it, it's 3.5 yards a catch. You got to push the ball down the field a little bit more than they did.
Right. Now, but again, so we think that every play, what his choice is dictated for him? No, it's not. I mean, of course not. He has a route tree in front of him. He has reads and he makes reads. I mean, every route in this game was short. I don't know. I'm not following this line of thinking at all. I look forward to screaming at Koharski about it. But to your question, which is different from that, yeah, I mean, I think they get to 1-6 and it's just, and there's no production and there's no sign of progress. I mean, right, we're going to get to the point with Callahan and his comments about Levis that now early on I was I was mostly on board with what he was saying, and I thought there's some good things in there and all that stuff, but the way he talked about it yesterday, I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm not seeing what you're seeing here.
There's that, and there's also at some point, I think we're probably getting to that point pretty quickly now. He needs to play better, but there are things that I can do to help him out a little bit better, which he's been saying for, the whole season to this point. It's getting to the point where that's getting pretty old. It's either you're not doing a very good job of adjusting and helping him out, or he's just that bad. At some point, you can't keep going back to the well of that same answer. It's one of those two things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so do it. And then if he still doesn't, if there's still nothing there, then what's the verdict here? I mean, at some point, everybody's got to have self-preservation. Again, I can't imagine that Brian Callahan would have any issues with his job security this year.
Yeah.
That would be shocking to me. But at some point, it's it's okay. I mean, you just have to be look, it's not. And what'll happen is it won't be in comments. It'll just be in actions. It'll just be. I mean, if Vrabel did that stuff all the time, he'd say one thing and then it's we're moving on from Craig Ackerman, or whatever it may be.
Ackerman always catching strays on the show.
Well, I mean, he was one of those guys.
He
that
was.
just defended, and then finally they, just moved on. Now, again, maybe that was. You never know when some of these moves are meddling too, right? Like how meddling is the owner?
Well, it is. It's also interesting too, though, because the first 2 weeks, particularly with the turnovers, right? The miracle flip in week 1, and the bowling ball in week 2. I think there was a little bit of, I don't know if shock is the right word, but maybe shock is the right word from Brian Callahan, just in terms of what he was seeing and how different it was from his expectation out there. And not that you've had turnovers as egregious as those the last few weeks, but I do think at some point, like with the coaching staff and with Callahan in particular, what your expectations were for your quarterback heading into the season, and now what the body of work tells you that he is two very different things. And I wonder if that realization is starting to creep in, whether he admits it publicly or not.
Yeah, like I'd love to know. I mean, good. Like the numbers are what they are. The protection was definitely better, and yeah, that's fine. Is it because Indy was banged up? They're not very good, sure, but regardless, he had better protection. And
it was the best protection the Titans quarterbacks had since when on Sunday. It's been a while.
Yeah, mate. I mean, that's a good question. Yeah, maybe is it better than any game last year? I mean, I feel like last year they had some games where they figured some things out, moved the pocket and whatever. But yeah, they had pretty decent conditions. So what was the film breakdown in the building? On Levis's play. I mean, I just can't imagine it would have been very, positive. But again, I understand the point of like they went short. Is that because, I mean, if anything, if that was beyond the early stuff, which again set up a touchdown,
right?
Beyond that, the screen, fake screen touchdown, could it have been because of the arm? But then it gets to what your point yesterday, which I agree, which is like, man, if you don't believe your quarterback can make all the throws, and Callahan totally refuted that yesterday, by the way. He said he did not agree with that, but like that would definitely be, I mean, you're already limited with this offense. This offense is already limited. If now all of a sudden you can't even use the whole field, then how talk about limited? Well, maybe that's how you get a 90-some yard passing game.
Yep. 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. Off and running on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. By the way, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. Ton of participation from you guys yesterday. We really appreciate it. It was difficult to keep up on the text line. We will do our best to keep up a little bit better today, but appreciate all the participation from you guys. We'll have more on the Titans coming up next. You're listening to Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
with the amount of short throws from Will, with the amount of checkdowns, with the amount of hot, that suggests that you've already got your verdict on Will and what you can
No.
do with him?
No, I don't think that's the case. No. I think there's a lot of things that he can do better, and there's things that I can do to help him better. And then there's around him can play better too. You know, I think that we're really close. There's a lot of things that we do well, and there's a lot of things that we just haven't quite gotten over the hump on when it comes to, losing 1-score games. Lost 3 of them now, where we're in position to have a chance to win, and we haven't done it. And I don't know that that's necessarily it's not all a Will thing either. There's things that I can do better to help him, and just haven't been there yet. And again, we're tight, we're close, and we got to play better. There's no doubt, and he's got to play better. But there's things that I think are encouraging and positive about it as well.
If the theme of the season, though, is to see Will do everything Will can do and get an ultimate verdict on Will, wouldn't that idea fall in line with letting him cut it loose more rather than playing it safe?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely calls that go down the field that don't get thrown down the field. So yeah, I don't. It was conservative nature in some of the runs because we run on the ball well. But yeah, I mean, we can just drop back and throw it down the field more. Sure, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
That was Brian Callahan yesterday with Paul Kuharski, paulkuharski.com.
I know that right now everybody's mad at Brian Callahan. I totally get it. They're 1-4. It hasn't been very impressive, but like his frustration there and answering those questions, exactly my frustration when I hear Kuharski ask this question. It's stupid. Kuharski's being a total dum-dum here. Dum-dum. This makes no sense.
Dum-dum.
Like, this actually makes me mad. I can't wait to have him in here and scream at him about this. So the verdict's in. We know Levis, but we're going to go out there and use think all day. But we're going to trot out basically a carcass. Like, what? Please explain this crap to me, Kuharski. Like, I mean, I give Kuharski crap all the time, right? But Kuharski's does a hell of a job. He's covered this team very well for a long time. I usually, for the most part, agree with him on things. I'd say like probably 80% plus. This is stupid.
That's a high percentage.
I think that's probably about right. But like, this is, I mean, I even like this is like a Stilly take. This is something I would expect Stilly to have as a take.
Wow. That's going to go over well tomorrow.
Well,
bring that up.
I will. I absolutely will. I don't understand unless Kuharski has information that they're out on him. And so he, that's where that's the genesis of this theory. But if it's just like out of the blue, talk about pulling something out of your keister.
Well, I'll just read a quick piece from paulkuharski.com, and you can check this article out. I'm not going to sit here and ruin the whole thing, but quote, the game was loaded with short passes, check downs, and hot reads. It's a super safe approach. It suggests a lack of trust in a guy with a big arm and a quick release. It says to me they've decided what he is, maybe temporarily, or what his is, maybe temporarily, while they continue to figure out their woeful passing offense, but likely for good. Brian Callahan would get no benefit from admitting as much, and then goes on to talk about around the league. Yes, there are some cases that passing is down, but Levis is topping out at 260, averaging 140, which is a bit skewed after the Miami game. 95 this week. I think the next closest to him was Justin Fields. It was like 150 something. So talking about like 95 in an NFL football game is pretty hard to accomplish.
It is.
Football.
And I thought there were a few plays. It's funny because obviously they've talked so much about take the safe, right? And that is important. Like, don't put the ball in harm's way if it's not there. Take the check down, and that's an important part of quarterbacking. But I thought on a few plays Sunday, Levis really went quickly to the check down. So that's Levis making that decision.
Right.
It's not, I mean, like Levis, like Paul, there were plays out there where there were receivers running down the field. He could have thrown the ball to them. When he tried, often he was incomplete. Sometimes, a couple times he would be a drop. A lot of times it was an inaccurate pass. But again, a lot of times he checked down quickly. Like, what do you – I seriously – I know people are already like, dude, are you okay? But like, this is weird to me. It's just a weird thing. I almost want to call Carl and yell at him today, but we can't have him on 3 straight days.
Chase on the text line says, "What's so stupid about it? It's a legit question. Why are we being so conservative if we're trying to see if he's the guy? We aren't running the ball that well." This is from Chase on the text line.
Well, first of all, running the ball is, I mean, Tony Pollard running the football, is that not the best thing this team does?
On offense, for sure, yes.
I mean, I would argue it might be so, I mean, look, they need to win. Like, if you're Brian Callahan, again, I don't think that there's like a job security issue, but like, he said this yesterday in the presser, and I mean, I think every coach, when it comes down to it, yes, the overarching theme of the season is Will Levis, but you're trying to win a football game. Hard to win in the NFL, and you're trying to figure out how you can win. I said going into the season, this team's got to run the ball a lot because that first of all, when you run the ball, that's how you help your protection. That's how you help your quarterback, right?
Yes. The problem with all that is they did run the ball reasonably well on Sunday. The protection was good. The conditions were good, and you still couldn't throw the ball.
Right, because he was bad.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, because he was bad.
It goes back to the root problem here is the quarterback's not good enough. And I think the longer we sit here and pretend like there's a chance that he's going to be, the more you're doing yourself a disservice as a franchise.
That's fine. That's fine. But, like, the idea that they have determined that, and so that's dictating their game plan is absolutely moronic. Well, the more I think about it, I'm getting more.
I'll say this, though. Like, if you do reach that determination, then just put Mason Rudolph in. Like, if you get to the point where that's the determination that we've talked about, like, what good does it serve you if Mason Rudolph's your starting quarterback? I don't think it serves you. It does a ton for you. Like, I don't. Do you win a couple more games? Maybe. We'll see with Mason Rudolph as your quarterback. But if you get to the point where you're scared to death to call anything, if you're Brian Callahan, well, then there's no point in putting the quarterback out there at that point.
Exactly. So look, I think Callahan is in the phase now of overstating. Like, well, we're seeing some good things, stuff like that. You know, I mean, I think he's like, it's try to give him some public confidence, support, things like that. Like, I just can't imagine that they're actually going through the film and be like, yeah, good stuff.
Be hard to imagine.
But again, like, listening to Callahan answer those questions, like, huh? No, what? I mean, they're still playing him. They want him to play well. Again, go back and watch all those throws. He checked down quickly a few times where I'm like, yeah. I mean, again, I don't know if there was nobody open at all, and maybe that's the case. Maybe in some of these plays, it's like there's just nothing there. So, okay, take the check down. But, like, he could have thrown the ball down the field more, and then he did, of course, and he threw a pick because he was way late throwing the ball.
Well, he threw a pick, and you brought it up yesterday, but I mean, he tried to throw one earlier in the game,
and that was another
totally dropped.
Yeah,
it was also just a lollipop up there,
and that was another vertical attempt. I mean, boy, those didn't look very good. And again, then you get into the arm thing, and so I do. I mean, and that could be part of Levis's decision making too, right? Is like, I just got to keep it short today because I don't have the arm. Which then it's like, whew, it's all quite.
Callahan did significantly shut that down yesterday in terms of like, I felt pretty good about his arm all week, and he even talked about the quote that Levis brought up of the interception, and had he had more 100% arm, maybe he puts more zip on it, and he was just like, yeah. I don't know if that really helps you there. I mean, he talked about there being some pressure in his face, and by the time the ball left his hand, he basically was like, I don't know how much the arm strength would have helped him there. It was just, I think we all kind of saw that he stared the receiver down, and the safety came from one side of the field to the other. I don't know how much the arm helps there.
Exactly. No, and that was one of those where, posed with that idea of the arm, Callahan went into basically explaining how bad of a play it was by Levis.
Right. 615,
that's what it was.
737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Titans a little bit later in the program. Tennessee taking on Alabama at Neyland Stadium coming up on Saturday. It has been a rough going for the Tennessee Vols offense the last few weeks. Are their problems fixable, or is this just what they are? We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Certainly there's big plays out there that we're a little bit off on. But even just, the run game, some of our pass game that's not vertically down the football field, we're close on things. 11 guys got to fully operate as one. And the good thing is we have guys that can do it. We have guys that have already done it before. We got to prepare the right way, practice really well, and take some steps. But we're fully capable of being more efficient than we were.
That's Josh Heupel yesterday on Tennessee's offense, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We are broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. A lot of conversation about the offense, the quarterback play in Heupel's press conference yesterday. It's not gone well offensively for Tennessee, really for the last 3 weeks. Now, in the Oklahoma game, you can say, all right, the Tennessee defense was dominating and Heupel took his foot off the gas, which, I mean, he basically said he did on the field after the game. So that is what it is. Arkansas, there's no question about it. The offense was bad. The passing game in particular just couldn't get anything done. And it was a similar story last week against Florida. They didn't even run the ball that well against Florida. Sampson scored all the touchdowns, and they eventually broke some big runs and kind of ground out some drives there. But they're still not even running the ball with the same level of efficiency that they were earlier in the season. So my question is, and I think the big question that's going to define Tennessee's season, are some of these problems that we're seeing on offense, particularly in the passing game, are those things that can be fixed, or is this just what they are? Because if this is just what they are, then you're probably looking at least 2 and maybe more than that, more losses this season if you're Tennessee. Like if you can't operate in the passing game significantly, not just a little bit better, significantly better than we've seen the last 2 weeks, then you're not going to beat Alabama. You're not going to beat Georgia. And there may be another loss or two, i.e. Vanderbilt, that creeps up and gets you at some point. So I ask you, Joe Rexrode, when you're watching this passing game, what do you see? And do you think the problems that we've seen, particularly the last 2 weeks, which include protection, which include the quarterback missing throws, and also just include, it looks like they're just not comfortable out there. Are those problems fixable at this point in the season?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a matter of I mean, really, I start with Nico. Just even he'll have like the other night he had a couple just like little dump offs where he throws it 1,000,000 miles an hour and it's incomplete. It's like it seems to me to be like sped up mentally and out of sorts, and he's just missing. There are throws. Cole Kubick did a breakdown. He does a really good job. Actually, I really like Cole Kubick as a sideline reporter. He and Diego Pavia almost had like a comedy variety hour after the Vandy, Kentucky game.
Pretty good.
Yeah, he's great. He does like weird stuff as a sideline reporter, which I love, but he's also obviously a guy who played. He does a lot of breakdown. He did a pretty interesting breakdown, basically ripping people who say, yes, they figured out the ball scheme. I mean, I suggested this the other day. I do think with all this stuff, like it gets cyclical and defenses find answers. I mean, I even think overall in the NFL, the defenses have found some answers on something. I know everybody's making a big deal out of, too high safety. So you run it, but some teams aren't running it against the too high or can't run it or aren't built, whatever. So it's all cyclical with scheme. But I mean, when Tennessee destroyed everybody 2 years ago, other than Georgia, I mean, look, that was like more than 10 years after Art Browse brought that stuff to Baylor and just, and like think about RG3's year at Baylor in that offense. People have had plenty of time. I mean, Nick Saban's a smart defensive coach, and they just got shredded because the scheme does put you in a bind. But then if you're protecting, if you can block their top pass rusher with one right tackle, if you have a receiver who cannot be covered deep down the field, if you have a quarterback who's putting everything on the money, it's insanely effective. Yeah. So is it fixable? Yeah, but are these players capable of raising the level of play? I mean, Nico I know he can be better than this. So you start with him. The protection, I think it's going to be a little bit of an issue all year. The receivers, yeah, I still think there's talent and depth there, but like someone really needs to emerge. We've talked about the tight ends being more involved, but like there are just, I mean, if Nico hits a couple of these throws, like there are still in the course of a game, they get people free.
Yeah.
And he's got to hit them. And then I think with Joey Halsley, and we've talked about this, but I also think like you probably have to just be willing to take a little bit more risks with him. I
agree.
think that's part of it too.
Well, I look, I think Nico, I think there's clearly some confidence problems right now. I think that's a big project for Josh Heupel this week, is to rebuild the confidence of Nico Iamaleava playing in this game. Because if he's not confident and he's not executing at a much higher level, then they have no chance Saturday. I know Alabama's got their own problems, and Alabama, defensively right now, it doesn't look like Alabama defenses that we're used to seeing. And, Milroe's turning the ball over right now, and I get all that. So Alabama's got their own problems they got to figure out. But if Nico doesn't execute at a higher level, then you're just not going to score enough points in this game to win. So I think that's a big project for Josh Heupel this week, is to really get in there and try to do his best to rebuild the confidence from Nico. And the offense is interesting from a couple of things. Number one, I think what we talked about with Adam Sparks before the year on the show is coming to fruition. I think they have several good receivers. They do not have a great receiver. Squirrel White's a good player. Brew McCoy is a good player. Thornton, when he's healthy, I think is a good player. They don't have, I think, a true difference maker at wide receiver, which I think you need one of those. And I'm not sure that they have one. We talked about the tight ends heading into the season, and the guy that we spent the most time talking about at tight end is Ethan Davis. Well, he's not been a factor whatsoever. He didn't even play him against Arkansas, and I think he got one catch, maybe two last week. Heupel was asked about that yesterday, and went with the we're planning to get him more involved. But I don't know that they trust him right now.
Yeah.
Like Kitzelman's on the field, and it's basically Kitzelman and Holden Stays when they're running the two tight end sets. And both those guys are good players, but neither one of those guys, I think, have the upside that Davis does in the passing game. So a lot of these things that we've talked about before the season, Davis was one of the stories of preseason. He was supposed to be this big weapon, and he's been a total non-factor in the offense. So some of the things that we talked about are not coming to fruition, and then some are, which is I think they got a lot of good receivers. I'm not sure they got any that are great.
Yeah. And, again, 2 years ago, and I know one of them got hurt, but they had two. They had two receivers who were terrors, right? And they've struggled to, and again, maybe Mike Matthews is that guy at some point, like probably next year. Maybe then Ethan Davis next year is. I mean, to me, it seems pretty obvious that like the other guys are better blockers.
Yes,
and so they're just more versatile tight ends. I still think they need to try to, get him in some matchups. But again, it's also like, I just look at the offense and I just feel like, again, they're playing the edges and they're limiting it. And it looks too much like it did with Joe Milton.
I would agree. And I think too, and you bring up Halsley, and this is where he and Heupel, I think, have really got to get this figured out. And how much of this is them and how much of this is just lack of faith in the quarterback right now, I don't know. But think about 2 years ago. They did a lot of things at a really high level. But what that allowed them to do was set up certain plays in a game that had the eye on later in the game, right? Like you would run, Jalen Hyatt, you'd line him up in the backfield and you'd run like a little quick out. And then he'd line up in the backfield and then he'd run, a slant across the middle. And that's setting up the wheel route from Jalen Hyatt in the later in the game from the backfield. And there's not enough of that right now. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're just not advanced enough with Nico at quarterback where he can handle all that. There's not enough setting up, I think, plays in the game for later in the game that we see all the, it's not just a Heupel Halsley thing. It's a lot of offensive coordinators at all levels of college football. You're trying to set things up later in the game to hit some shots down the field. And I just don't see enough variety in that right now.
Yeah. And that was Alex Golish. And Alex Golish called plays. And I'm not even totally sure what it goes on in play calling between Heupel and Halsley.
I think I don't know if it's exclusively Heupel, but look, every time they flash it over there, Heupel's got the play sheet up calling it. So I don't know.
So, I mean, maybe that's part of the deal too. I mean, look, goalless was a loss.
No doubt.
mean, there's no doubt. But whatever. I mean, you have to move on. And I'm with you. Now, everything back then worked well too. So
Correct.
it makes it a lot easier to set things up when
No doubt.
clean pockets, great quarterback, all that stuff. But I'm with you. It does not seem as creative.
So are Tennessee's offensive problems fixable? We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. More on that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Nashville's best deal this week is Staley's Chicago Italian Dining right here in Nashville. Winner of numerous Best Of awards. Truly one of the best kept secrets in Nashville. Staley's Chicago Italian Dining brings amazing Italian food to the South, including original Italian beef sandwiches, Vienna Chicago-style hot dogs, and the best gyros south of Chicago. Head to thegamenashville.com/deals to get half off a $20 gift card while supplies last. Taking your thoughts on Tennessee. They host Alabama coming up on Saturday. Are some of the problems that we're seeing right now on offense fixable for Tennessee? And Joe, some of it just comes down to accuracy, right? Like even in the Arkansas game, which they didn't have a whole lot going on, but there were a couple shots that Nico had, they just missed in that game. The same thing the other day against Florida. I know, Vol Twitter right now is going through the film trying to put some of these on the receivers, and I guess some of them could have made some diving catches, but you need your quarterback to be a little bit more accurate than he's been the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, without question. And again, it's just he doesn't seem to be comfortable. He seems to be fighting it a little bit. I
think he's in his head.
Yeah. Cam says, I think Nico's looked his best when the balls are thrown early and get into a rhythm. Last 2.5 games, been run 70% of the time. Then he throws a deep ball. It's 5 yards overthrown. Have to make an effort to get him in rhythm early. I think, there's something to be said for that. It's like, but I mean, this offense is like, Dylan Sampson is the best player on offense, right?
Yep.
So you want him to have the ball. And, look, however you can scratch out a win against Alabama,
You'll take
for all of these discussions and issues, which are very real. If you find a way to beat Alabama, and if you beat them 17-16, you are very much in play to make the playoff. I mean, that's the bottom line. So now I don't think they're going to win if he doesn't play better. If he doesn't,
yeah.
I mean, it's weakness, it's strength against strength and weakness against weakness. It's the Alabama's offense is still tremendously powerful, and then obviously Tennessee's defense, although without Keenan Peele, but that's a strength against strength. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And the other side, it's like, how bad is Alabama's defense? Is it being a little bit exaggerated? I mean, at times I think they've looked good against Tennessee's offense, which I thought this year would be magnificent. And early in the season, I was like, yep, they're back to 2022 type stuff. And of course, no, they're not at all right now.
Well, and this is also college football, right? Like, how many times have we headed into a game and thought that it was going to play out a certain way from a stylistic standpoint, and it just turns out to be completely different. Like, everybody, I think, right now is expecting like this titanic clash between Alabama's offense and Tennessee's defense, and maybe that's what we get on Saturday. If Tennessee figures some things out this week at practice, is Alabama's defense vulnerable? Has the demise of Alabama's defense been greatly over-exaggerated the last couple of weeks? I mean, I'll say this, and I know it flipped on them in a hurry in the second half of that game. Defense looked pretty darn good against Georgia a couple weeks ago in that first half, and then they started to let Carson Beck come back, and how much of that was because of the score of the game, I don't know. But it did go from a stretch from Alabama's defense where they looked dominant in the first half against Georgia. It unraveled on them in the second half. Obviously, they never got Vanderbilt's offense figured out. And even last week, like South Carolina, I think left a lot of plays on the table at the quarterback position, and they were still right there with a chance to win the game at the end of the game.
Yeah, no, it's like you said, that first half of Georgia, after the first half of the Georgia game, like, well, they're the best team in the country. Yeah, here we go. Kalen DeBoer has taken Jalen Milroe to another level, and everything else is, I mean, that's the best team. And then, yeah, Georgia made some huge plays. I do think that 30-7, it was 30-7. Was it 27-0 too, or something like that?
I believe so. Yeah.
I think that plays into it. I do have to kind of remove the Vanderbilt game. It's just such a different type of game that you're playing when you play Vanderbilt's offense. And then last week, though, that's where I figured they would come out and, reassert themselves. Like you said, Lenore Sellers, he's not a great thrower at quarterback, but they didn't look great. So I think they've lost some confidence on that side of the ball, which Tennessee needs that to continue.
I got a text that says, feels like Heupel is forcing his offense upon the group of guys whose strengths don't accommodate Heupel's style of offense. Yeah, I don't know. Like, look, Nico, I think clearly has got a ton of ability. Like, you watch some of the throws that he's made this year, and you could see it, right? Like, he's got an NFL arm. He's got unbelievable talent. And I even thought last week, I think is a perfect example of what I'm talking about with him and confidence. The first drive, some of it was in the run game, but they were moving the ball right down the field. He made a couple of nice throws. He got out of the pocket a couple of times, picked up some yards with his legs, and they were moving the ball right down the field on their first drive. and then they run the read option, and he decides to pull it a little bit too late. He fumbles the ball, and after that, they couldn't do anything. Like, how much of that was just, oh no, here we go again? And Heupel's talked about his ability, to reset, and it's one of those Heuplisms he throws out there. Play the next play, independent of its own, all that stuff.
Sure.
Like, I wonder how well Nico's actually doing that right now. Like, is he letting some of the mistakes that either he makes or the offense makes with penalty, is that affecting his confidence in the middle of the game right now? Because I thought he started great, and then he basically just dropped the ball, and then it was nothing after that for the majority of the game.
No, that may be, and that's human nature, and so that's why all coaches talk about that stuff. And it is a huge skill if you can do it. Like, you have to, obviously, you talk about that like defensive back a lot, right? Because you're going to get beat at times. You have to be able to just get to the next play. But maybe that is it. And he's had the dropsies, in different situations with the football this year. And again, I also feel like his confidence in his protection is, and I'm not saying it's unwarranted, but I don't think it's high.
No.
And Heupel had some interesting comments about like 4 guys playing as one on the offensive line. Like, okay, so are you singling out Lance Hurd there?
Right.
With that comment? Because he has not been good.
I mean, I think that his point was, it's a lot of times they're getting it from
It could be 1
4, and it's one on any.
Yeah.
But
that's probably more what he meant, right?
It's probably what he meant.
But
I bet if you look at the
Hurd.
tape, a lot of times it's probably Lance Hurd. Like, the tackle position has been very disappointing to this point.
And look, and this is where it's like, I understand that Lance Hurd was a 5-star, but like, if you're taking the 3rd tackle from another SEC team, you may not have a superstar.
Right.
It's just like Andre Dillard had all the traits too, which is why he was a 1st-round pick. But some people just aren't very good at football.
Well, and
I feel like that's some of what we're seeing here.
Well, and with the exception of Darnell Wright, who, by the way, they did not recruit, was there before they got there. This text kind of brings it up here that we got on the text line. If Heupel doesn't make a change at offensive line coach because Ellerby's his friend, it will ultimately be his demise. Recruiting and development has not been good enough at that position. It's year 4, and the offensive line has gotten worse every year. Ellerby has been there.
We've talked about it. It's like that's been hugely disappointing that they can't find their own guys they recruit and develop to play at a high level, because Mays is also not his guy, right? So Mays and Wright are not, and it's Spraggins. Spraggins isn't either.
Yeah, I don't think. No, Spraggins been there forever.
Yeah,
I think he's like year 6.
Those are their better. I mean, yeah. So like they have not, and they've had a couple guys left and whatever, but like O-line and secondary. But I think now you were seeing O-line is really what is happening there. You have to be able to have homegrown good players.
Well, look,
a program that's recruiting like this, that's doing all the things it's doing, you should be able to produce good offense.
Well, look, right now they're recruiting well on the offensive line.
Right.
They got the 5-star David Sanders coming in next year. How good is he? I mean, everybody tells you he's great. How much confidence do you have that right now, given their track record of developing offensive linemen, how much confidence do you have in their ability to develop guys like that? I don't. I don't know what that's going to look like until proven otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, and he, that's a huge, they missed out on Seton, went to Colorado.
Yep.
But he is a huge test case for this. It's like at some point, someone's got to work out. And they'll probably need him to work out relatively quickly, although I never look at freshmen as, that's
especially
a special
up
case.
Front.
Right.
I got a text that says, under no circumstance should our wide receivers be split out so far that another step takes them out of bounds. Makes zero sense to me. I know they want to spread the offense and weaken the box, but if you try to do anything else out of that formation, you're already at a huge disadvantage. Just from an unnamed texter.
I mean, that's the system. I mean, to me, you could say that at times, but for the most part, if you execute the offense, that helps you, and you can do different things out of that. I mean, you force a defense to declare when you do that. I mean, the NFL, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. So I disagree on that. Look, I mean, his system is he's not going to change his system. The general,
right.
It's just like if a coach runs an option offense, like next year, Vanderbilt will have a different quarterback in there. So you can do different things that suit that QB, but for the most part, like the offense is going to be the offense.
Well, and I hear what the text is saying from this standpoint. Like, we talk about operating over the middle of the field a little bit more. Number one, do they trust the quarterback to do that? He threw another pick over the middle of the field the other night, by the way. And number two, like when you're stacked on the outside, it is hard to operate over the middle of the field that way because you got to run so far to get there.
Right.
But they're not always like totally out wide. They do have formations where they line up toward the middle of the slot as
Right.
well.
And they have, you send a tight end over the middle too and things like that.
Right. 615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll switch gears coming up next. Get into Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, another big win over the weekend. What do we make of their path to the postseason? How dangerous can Vanderbilt be in some of the bigger games they've got coming down the stretch here? We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Vanderbilt, another big win over the weekend. They take down Kentucky on Saturday on the road. Gets them to 4-2. We talked about it yesterday, Joe. I mean, the Georgia State loss still is confounding to me when it comes to Vanderbilt and what else they've done this year. They were right there against Missouri, probably should have won that game. So we legitimately could be talking about a 6-0 Vanderbilt team right now. Nonetheless, they are 4-2. And thinking back to the preseason, I think their over/under win total was 2.5. I think it was 2.5, maybe 3.5.
2.5 or 3.5.
I think I had them at 3. You may have them at 4
Yeah.
heading into the year. Well, they're clearly they're gonna surpass that. They got Ball State coming up on Saturday. I believe they're 27-point favorites in that game. Then it's Texas, who's the number 1 team in the country, Auburn, South Carolina, on the road at LSU, and at home to close out the season against Tennessee. That's their schedule left. So at 4-2, Joe, I'm looking at their schedule right now, and I'm saying I think the postseason, nothing's ever a guarantee, but I'm feeling great about postseason play for Vanderbilt based on where they're at right now. My question is, how much damage do we think they can do down the stretch here? Texas, and I know they've taken down Alabama when Alabama was number 1. Texas looks really darn good. That's going to be a tough task for Vanderbilt. But I look at the rest of these games. Auburn on the road, certainly a gettable game for Vanderbilt. South Carolina at home, that's certainly a winnable game for Vanderbilt. LSU on the road, we'll see. I mean, that's a tough place to play. There's no doubt about that. I know that they're the number 8 team in the country right now. I'm still not totally convinced how good they are, but I'm not going to rule Vanderbilt out in that game. And certainly with the way Tennessee's offense looks right now, I don't think you can rule Vanderbilt out of that game either. So my question is, how much damage do we think Vanderbilt can do coming down the stretch here, sitting here today at 4-2?
They could do some damage without question. You can go through that too. And it's not like, maybe Hugh Freeze finally, prepares a team for Diego Pavia, perhaps.
Does he find a quarterback?
I mean, for whatever reason, there's that. I watch Auburn and at times they actually look like a pretty decent football team, you get to, Shane Beamer, for whatever reason, has just had Vanderbilt's number. And then, LSU. I mean, look, they also could, it's certainly still possible. It's on the table that they don't get to 6. Okay.
Yes.
But I'm with you. I mean, I'm pretty confident the way that they're playing. Obviously, you got to get this one Saturday and you got to get it convincingly. I will tell you, on the 26th, I was supposed to go I think Alabama Ole Miss, but it's no, actually, Vanderbilt, Texas would be the game. Yes. I can make that trip for Vanderbilt, Texas, which might be game day, by the way.
Could be.
I don't know. I don't know if it will be game day because, the Texas 3 times in a row thing, because Texas, Georgia this week,
Trying to see. I need to go see. I'll look at this right now. What other games are that weekend?
Yeah. But, I mean, that would be so awesome. And again, if Texas handles Georgia, then that would be Vanderbilt's second opportunity at home to beat number 1 in the same season. And look, I actually, Texas blew out Oklahoma and their defense dominated the game. Oklahoma's bad. I don't Texas is number 1, but remember early in the year when they went up to Michigan and won, it was oh, these guys, and they're very good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they keep getting running backs hurt, and they're 7th running back as an All-American.
It's unbelievable, yeah.
They have great receivers. Ewers is a great player, but they're still not this juggernaut. There's nobody out there in college football this year, which I think is fun when that's the case. It's some years it's not like that. Some years it is. There's just no one to me that's absolutely unbeatable.
Yeah.
So I think Vanderbilt can make that again. I think, again, it's just their offense has to execute at a high level and control the game just like they did at Kentucky. And they have to kind of stay. It's kind of like staying ahead of the, just staying. It's almost on a drive in football. Stay ahead of the sticks, right?
Yeah.
And if you can control with your offense and put that pressure on the other team, and you find your way to a couple stops, you got a chance.
By the way, some of the other high-profile games for the 26th, which is that weekend with Texas and Vanderbilt, Missouri, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, which right now is a good matchup. Here's a sneaky one that I think game day may take a look at. Notre Dame, Navy. Navy being 5-0.
Yeah.
Right now.
No, that's a good point because Navy is actually legit, and Navy has a legit chance to win that game. That's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm rooting for
Miami,
Nashville.
Too.
I mean, another thing, seriously, is like, I mean, logistically, because again, like next year is going to be really cool at Vanderbilt when it's all done. But right now, logistically, game day with all the construction actually it'd be a bit of a chore.
Put the desk on a crane over there.
Yeah. They might have to go to the Harry Potter dorm. That would actually be cool from the top of that dorm.
It would be pretty awesome. Lance on the text line says, if Vandy hits 6 wins, Clark Lee needs to win SEC Coach of the Year. I think
he's almost a lock already.
Pretty much getting there right now.
But I'm with you. If they get to a bowl game, yes, he's SEC Coach of the Year. Because Coach of the Year awards, by and large, are who exceeded expectations the most. Who was the surprise?
Right.
Not, wow, Sark, dominant year. Now, I will say if Texas comes in and just wins the SEC in year one,
maybe need to get consideration.
Yeah, he'd need to. Like if they go undefeated, then he'd need to get some consideration. But yeah, I'd say Clark Lee has a great chance at it.
Wes in Clarksville says, what if Vandy beats another number 1 team? Has that been done by anyone before? A team beating 2 different number 1 teams in the same year?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer.
I'm sure that it probably has. I mean, at some point, like if you're good enough, you beat a number 1 team maybe in the regular season, and then let's say in the playoff or in the bowl game or something, you beat another one.
Yeah.
It's probably been done, but I bet the list isn't that long simply because how often does a team play 2 different number 1 teams in the same year?
Exactly.
It can't happen very often.
Just having the opportunity has got to be rare. Another thing that came up, and this is, I noticed this because Teresa Walker retweeted it, but it was a Vanderbilt account. So they went back through, and at least since 1960, this is the first time Vanderbilt has played consecutive SEC games without trailing at all in either game.
That's
at
pretty
least
wild.
Since 1960. I mean, who knows? I mean, you may go back to like before they were in the SEC. I mean, I have no idea, but that's quite a stat.
Yeah,
and the fact that again, it's also just pretty amazing that they played Alabama and Kentucky on the road and they never trailed.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
But that's what it is. It's get ahead with your offense, put the pressure on the other team, just keep taking it to them with that offense, which is elite. Like the offense is, when it's functioning, it's really good. And then, your defense, they just find a way.
I would love to know how many of these games, they got 6 games left. Can you make an argument that they'll be favored to win 3 of them? Like they're certainly favored against Ball State. They're not going to be favored against Texas. Will they be favored against Auburn on the road?
I doubt.
Will they be favored against South Carolina at home?
Maybe. If they, depending on how South Carolina plays between now and then, that's possible.
So there's 2 right there. I think I don't know what the Vanderbilt Auburn line is. I don't know if there's a line right now. I think that one's going to be pretty close to them being a favorite.
Yeah, no, which is wild. I mean, look,
and they won't be against LSU and they won't be against Tennessee, but still.
But like the Tennessee game, just a couple weeks ago, I would have said, I don't know, what's that line? Vols by 31.5. Right. And now it's like Vols by 5.5.
Well, look, if I had to, I say that like Tennessee will be the favorite in that game. Right now.
We might have
how would you pick?
We might have ourselves a game right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta say, I'm excited to see, just Pavia just alone, just the way he attacks these games, and brings he totally. It's wild to think one person could do so much, but they have this total attitude. Like, yeah, we're gonna win this game that I've never seen from Vanderbilt football.
By the way, our statistician Nick Keyser, 2008 Florida taking down number 1 Alabama, which was in the SEC title game, and then the national championship game against Oklahoma.
Okay, and that's the only one, Keyser. But that. Okay, so that's one we found. Okay, good find.
I'm sure it's happened a few times, but again, like how many teams actually have the opportunity to do that?
Play 2 different ones,
right?
Yeah,
not very often. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on Vanderbilt, their path to the postseason, plus the Nashville Predators still in search of win number 1 on the regular season. They'll try to get it tonight. If they don't, what's the concern level? We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Tune in to 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU football. Little Tuesday night football. Blue Raiders taking on Kennesaw State at Floyd Stadium. Pregame starts at 5:30, kickoff at 7 o'clock. MTSU football coverage on 93.3 FM Totally Hits Nashville, presented by Sloan's Motorcycle ATV. Also, Preds fans, don't miss tomorrow night's Smashville Live at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs at 6 o'clock. See your Preds star players up close and personal. Your chance to get autographs and pictures as well. Tomorrow's guests will be Philip Tomasino and Yuso Parsonen. That's tomorrow night at Brewhouse South in Cool Springs and on your home of the Nashville Predators, 102.5 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines. I got one texter asking, why is Vanderbilt not ranked? They're 4-2. They've taken down Alabama. Why is Vanderbilt not ranked? We talked about this briefly yesterday, Joe. To answer the question, I don't know. Vanderbilt should be ranked. The AP poll many times has several things that I find confounding. We talked about some of those yesterday, but, Vanderbilt, knowing that the Georgia State loss is probably a big part of this, like that's one that is really a killer in this discussion. I still think they should be ranked at 4-2. I think they've proven enough that they're a top 25 team.
Yeah. Well, the media is closer than the coaches. The AP poll, they are the next team. So Navy got 84 points. Vanderbilt got 68. So technically they're 26.
Yep.
In the coaches poll, coaches disrespect. They would be 26, 27, 28, 29. They'd be 30th in the coaches poll. So
what's wrong with these coaches?
I don't know. They got they're rolling with Nebraska and Michigan. Coaches have Michigan 22. Michigan is not very good. Not a top 25 caliber team. But Vanderbilt beat Ball State and you get a little bit of chaos in front of you and actually, I think Illinois, Michigan play, so one of them will lose. So you got a chance to get in those rankings. But yeah, look, also they could very easily be top 7. Right?
You're 6-0. Like if you finish
6-0 with a win over Bama,
yeah,
and a win at Missouri and a win at Kentucky,
yeah,
you'd be the top 5.
Maybe, yeah.
That's how they are a couple plays away from being absolutely the shocking story in sports, not just college football. So Jim from Springfield says 2017 Auburn beat number 1 Alabama and number 1 Georgia. For some reason, I don't remember that. I'm not doubting you, Jim, but why am I blanking on that?
Yeah, I don't remember that either. I need to look up. Again, I'm not doubting Jim. I don't have Auburn's personal history memorized.
I get my years mixed up.
I know 2014 when they made the national championship game, or 13, whatever that was, they beat Georgia and Alabama on 2 miracle plays, like back to back.
Was that what 2014 or 2015?
2013, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
When they played Jameis in the national championship game.
Right.
2017, Auburn lost to Georgia by 21 points. So I don't think that one. That must have been the SEC title game. So you're right. They beat Georgia the regular season game, November the 11th.
Yes.
Beat Alabama to close it out, and then lost to Georgia in the SEC title game.
Yeah, and in fact, that was 2 weeks apart. Yeah. That Georgia, then Louisiana Monroe, then Alabama. So number one beat them both. That's pretty good. But then, yeah, Georgia got them. And then that was the team. That's right. That's the team that lost to UCF and allowed UCF to be national champions of their own making.
Yes. Joe, the Nashville Predators back in action tonight at Bridgestone Arena, taking on the Seattle Kraken. Preds are 0-2 to start the season. So in search for win number 1 coming up tonight. Now, this is kind of the discussion. We got a couple of questions yesterday about, how are you guys, why didn't you talk about the Predators over the weekend? It's like, well, the football team's in total disarray.
Can we complain about that for a
17-game season? The Predators are 2 games into an 82-game season. And just to kind of highlight that a little bit, the Preds are 0-2. So there's no doubt about it. They need to get a win. The results need to start to come. And if they don't get one tonight, I will start to be like, all right, time to get going here if you're them. Colorado's 0-3. Edmonton's 0-3. I'm just saying it's pretty early. Pretty early at this point. Edmonton is 0-3, and they've looked horrible at this point. I think we would all agree that Edmonton's pretty darn good.
Yeah, they're going to just repeat last year.
They got a -12 goal differential in 3 games. The Oilers are getting crushed out there.
Remember, a year ago, after a month, it was like, well, they're the most disappointing team in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Colorado's 0-3. And I think Colorado's got some actual legitimate problems starting in goal. But again, it's 3 games into an 82-game season. Preds are 2 games in. Now, having said that, we've talked about the Novak stuff, right? And I said before the year, I don't care what Tommy Novak does in the regular season, they have to go get a centerman. Well, we're 2 games into the year. Novak made it basically 2 periods of the first game on a line with Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, and then the plug got pulled on that. He got moved down. Sissons got moved up. That's how they started last game. And it looks like tonight, based on practice yesterday, that they're already moving Stamkos to the middle, and he's playing with Cole Smith and Jonathan Marchessault. So
of course, just as we all predicted,
the early season line tinkering going on. These were the lines at practice yesterday, and Max Hers put these out there, which generated a lot of reaction. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, which you would expect.
Yeah.
Cole Smith, Stamkos, Marchessault.
Sure.
Jankowski, Novak, Evangelista, Parson, and Sissons, McCarron, with Tomasino already finding a nice spot on the bench 2 weeks in. Now, we'll see if that's what they go with tonight. Burnett didn't fully commit to that yesterday after practice, but some early season line shuffling going on.
Philip, have a seat. Colton, how about that 4th line? What do you think, buddy? A little more comfortable there. And,
by the way,
Cole Smith, get up here.
We need you to move up. We need you to play with Stamkos and Marchessault.
I'm fascinated by that move.
I am too.
You could say, it's like a Rubik's Cube or something, or just like take all these names and put them together in any way you think might be possible. I don't think I'm at any point putting Cole Smith on a line with that Stamkos is centering with Marchessault. I don't know.
Well,
but why the heck not?
I think the general idea is Cole Smith is a very good skater. He skates very well. He's a straight line player, and you're trying to, I guess, muck some things up and create room for Stamkos and Marchessault. So I get that part of it. However, I'm a little skeptical that Cole Smith playing on a line with Steven Stamkos may put him a little bit over his skis. We'll see what happens there. But what I think this does is, and go back and look at the ice time from last game. Burnett talked about in game 1 with Novak specifically. Didn't have his legs going early in the game. Felt like the shuffle kind of switched things up there. Last game, Burnett talked about how he didn't have some guys going in the game. And I go back and you look, Tomasino had like 12 minutes ice time, which included some power play time, by the way. So 5-on-5, not very much. Same thing with Novak and Evangelista. So some of the younger guys in the lineup right now, I think clearly are not satisfying Andrew Burnett with the way they're playing. And look, people were freaking out yesterday about Tomasino sitting. I would say this. In terms of like the pecking order right now, the forward group, Parson and set the first 2 games. It was always Parson and Tomasino at the bottom of the totem pole until proven otherwise. So I don't know that I would freak out yet about the lineup decisions by game 3. I think you got to give it some time to kind of play itself out here. But they need a win tonight. There's no doubt about that.
Texter says, Cole freaking Smith on the second line? I'm going to throw up. Why? Can't you just have some fun with this? What if this is a stroke of genius?
Could be.
I'm very interested to see how it works out. People get so mad about Cole Smith.
Well, people get mad about line combinations too.
Yes.
It's early in the season. Regardless of who's playing with him, I'm interested to see Stamkos down the middle. Like, what does that look like at at this stage in his career? The idea is to get him the puck a little bit more often, and you naturally have the puck more when you're playing center. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
I still just feel like I want him shooting, but
yeah, and look, he played center for the majority of his career. It didn't stop him from scoring goals,
Sure,
so he knows what to do there. But I'm really interested to see how this goes. But all of this highlights exactly what I'm talking about before the season. It's not a maybe they need to go do it. They have to go find another centerman by the trade deadline. And we can sit here and dress it up all they want. They have to go find another one by the deadline.
And maybe it'll end up being something like early in that 17-18 season when they went out and got Turris, in a month into the year. I mean, it could be something like that too. Cam says, why can't we put an offensive guy in the wing with Stammer like Evangelista? Yeah, I do think that, look, Novak is a better player when he's playing with Evangelista, right?
Yeah.
I think I'd roll with that a little bit.
Also, Andrew Burnett has shuffled up lines in both games so far. So, until the Cole Smith combination makes it through more than like a period and a half, I don't know that I'd get overly worked up about it. It could change pretty quickly tonight. It may change by the morning skate.
We do have Pred's pick to click, right?
We do.
I'm taking Cole Smith.
Are
I'm
you?
telling you right now. I'm
Is that
calling
a-
my shot.
Is that a problem?
Hat trick.
Is that a
Cole
promise?
Smith hat trick. Sure.
Hey, I mean, you're already up in the competition thanks to our
Why not?
hockey guru, Paul Karski.
House money. He's better at making hockey picks than coming up with football storylines this week.
737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Preds. A couple more thoughts to get to there. We will get back into the Titans coming up next as well. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode at 7:45. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode 1025, 1063. The Game. Join Jared Stillman, Chris Sanders, Derek Mason at Twin Peaks and Cool Springs this Sunday for the pregame show, 9:30 to 11:30. They'll break down the Titans' Week 7 matchup against the Bills, give you the latest updates before the game. Pregame show presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, broadcasting live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up here in just a few minutes. get back into the Titans coming up here as well. By the way, get into a little trade talk going up at 8 o'clock. So looking forward to that.
Yes, it's that time.
It is.
It's that time of
It is getting
it's
to
that
be
time of life for the Titans.
Getting to be that time. By the way, the Cole Smith slander still going on the text line right now. Got a text that says, "We get mad because he sucks."
God,
Cole Smith.
no one.
Let me put it to you this way: Cole Smith does not suck. First off, he has a very specific role that they ask him to play. He plays it really well. Now, does that role and should that role include a top 6 spot with Steven Stamkos? Probably not. So I'll be the first one to tell you that. But in the role that he has been playing, he's been fine. He's a good penalty killer. That fourth line has been fine.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to him playing instead of like a Tomasino, right? I mean, that's sort of which again, I understand. You want your first round picks to be so good that, of course, they're in the lineup, and even that they have a prominent spot in the lineup. Yeah. And what can I tell you about Tomasino? It's just not what the reality is. He made the team.
He did. Oh, look, I thought the first game against Dallas, I thought he did some nice things. Like Tomasino, we all know this. This is a big year for him. It's a big year for Parsonen. If those guys don't figure it out this year, they will not be here. They will move on from those guys after this year if it doesn't work out. So there's still, I think we get caught up in the immediacy of it, and it's something that, I've got to check myself too when it comes to hockey. Hockey's a long marathon, man. It's a long season, and I'm just saying I would not overreact to decisions being made by game 3. There's a lot of newness that they're trying to work together. They clearly have not found someone yet that Brunette feels comfortable playing with Stamkos and Marchessault. Now, you could say, well, how do you know Tommy Novak played 2 periods with him? I get it. I would assume at some point that he's going to get another opportunity with that line.
Yeah, I thought that might get a little more run.
I thought it might get a little bit more run. I would assume at some point they'll go back to that and see what it looks like. But, I also thought all along there will be different points this year where they're giving a look to Stamkos down the middle. I think it makes sense, to see what he can still do there at his age. And look, I know that, after the way they played last year and the fact that they're still together, it seems unfathomable at some point that the O'Reilly, Forsberg, Nyquist line is going to get broken up. I would almost guarantee you there's going to be at some point this year where they play Forsberg, Stamkos, and Marchessault together just to see what it looks like. I think you'd be crazy not to.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen at some point.
Well, even don't you? I would think that might not even be long if you're down in the third period of a game.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah. I think the way their lineup is constructed, they've got options, and that's a good thing to have. We talked about it on defense too, right? Right now Brady Shea technically is playing with Luke Shen, but I guarantee you tonight, if they're in a situation where they need to go get a goal, or they're in a situation maybe even late in the game where they're trying to protect the lead, you will see Yossi and Shea together. It's going to happen. Brunette is not afraid to situationally kind of tinker his lineup a little bit, which I think is smart.
Yeah. Robin Rockfell says, big mistake with the Preds not playing them more in the preseason. Didn't play their top players at the last couple preseason games. It's a common theme across multiple sports.
First off, preseason hockey is way too long. I've talked with players about this and former players. The general consensus is you need about 3 games. Get your timing back, kind of get your, take a hit or 2. You don't see a whole lot of hitting in the preseason, except for this year when all the stars were getting hurt in the preseason. But I don't know if the preseason is the answer. I do think, though, when you have Stamkos and Marchessault and some big name players trying to fit into your lineup, we talked about this. It could take a while. It could take 10, 15, 20 games where they really start to settle in. And I think that's both 5-on-5. Right now, the power play percentage wise is not very good for the Predators right now. Now, I think they've created some good looks, but I think at some point the talent on that thing is too much, where the more you stick with it, the more chemistry they build, it's going to be productive at some point. And it's 82 game season. You got to be patient.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, it'd be nice for them to go get a win tonight.
Yeah, you just don't want to be in a hole, right? And as you pointed out, you got some teams in the West already scuffling, but yeah, you just want to be able to scratch out some wins, and this is where you are built like this is where you hope that you can lean on your goalie in
Yeah.
some games and win a 2-1 game.
Which, by the way-
and things like that.
By the way, he played Saturday. I thought he looked pretty good. Saros did. So, when you don't score any goals in the game, you're not helping your goalie very much. So I'm not, I thought Saros looked good on Saturday coming back from the injury. And the bottom line is also this, like, I know that they've lost the first 2 games and it's easy for panic to start to set in. They outshot Dallas by a pretty significant margin, had a lot of good looks in the third period of that game. They had great looks the other night. Cam Talbot played out of his mind for Detroit. And I know at some point, like oh my gosh, they're playing a hot goalie and they're getting chances and not scoring, that gets old. But I would much rather early in the season be in that spot than just getting totally blown off the ice. They're definitely not getting blown off the ice right now. Like they had the better of the looks against Detroit. If you do that in an 82 game season, over the long haul, you're going to like the results of that.
Yeah. So don't freak out unless they lose the next game. Then
if they lose tonight, you have my permission to freak out.
Then it's over, basically.
Well, I will say, though, if they lose tonight and they're 0-3 and they have, I don't know what Edmonton's schedule looks like this week other than they're here on Thursday, that could be an interesting early season matchup if both teams are not won a game by the time Thursday rolls around.
That's wild with Edmonton. And Saros, that's the thing with Saros. It's he obviously it's pretty consistent with Saros is slow starter. Maybe the other night was an indication that that's not going to be the case.
Maybe
with him. That's just how some people are.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is when you see the puck start to go in for Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, which it will. I mean, those guys have been proven players in this league for a long time, then I think you're going to see kind of that layered offensive approach that they're looking for, right? In a perfect world, I think they'd love to keep the O'Reilly line together and then find a match, whether it's Novak or somebody else, to play with Stamkos and Marchessault, because last year the Forsberg line was great, but when the playoffs come around and the other team is only worried about one line, that's not a good spot to be in the playoffs. Like, you have to have multiple lines that are threatening. And really that's what the regular season is about. You got to obviously you have to win enough games to get to the playoffs. But I think it's a building process to get to the point that by the time the playoffs come around, you feel like you're threatening on multiple lines and you just give people problems to deal with matchup wise. That's all the NHL playoffs are about, is matchups.
So who are they going to trade for? Who'd you throw out there? You got Granlund coming back?
I mean, Granlund is an unrestricted free agent. I mean, look, so is John Tavares. Now, my dream is dead because up until like right before the season, Crosby was coming in on an expiring contract. And I was like, man, you imagine telling a Predators fan like 5 years ago, by the way, you're going to have Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Sidney Crosby on your team.
On a line
together. So that one's dead. But, I mean, look, it's early in the season. There's always teams that underachieve. And look, maybe the Preds will be one of them. I don't know. But there's always teams that underachieve, players that become available as the season goes on here. There's a lot of unrestricted free agents next year that are interesting. And that's where you get into some of the rental players at the deadline. They will have options at the trade deadline should they decide to pursue it. And look, we'll see what happens. That's also where the Johansson thing comes into effect. If Johansson loses his appeal and the Predators get cleared up $4 million for money, well, that helps you a lot at the trade deadline to go get somebody.
Yeah. He was he limping last night when he was walking around? Did he have a little limp or?
I don't know. Is he out golfing?
You can golf if you're hurt, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big deal. $4 million.
Vengen texted me and said, Zegras. Go get Zegras. Maybe.
We talked about him before.
Talked about him all offseason.
Yeah. Boy, how fun would that be?
It would be fun. Maybe you should make it. But again, people get mad at me all the time about Tommy Novak. I'm telling you. I like him. I like some of the skill sets that he brings to the table. I don't think he's a legitimate top 6 player. So when you don't have a legitimate top 6 player, particularly in the playoff time, to play with Stamkos, you got to go get somebody. And I think Barry Trotz, I don't know if he agrees with me about Novak, but I think he at least deep down realizes that the chances of them having to go get somebody to play center at the deadline are pretty high. I think you got to know that heading into the year.
Well, he has some physicality limitations, especially in playoff hockey. But when you talk about layered scoring, that's why I like that line as your third line too, to sneak in a couple goals here, but you just got to find that 2C.
Tommy Novak as a third-line center, I feel really good about.
Yeah.
Tommy Novak as a second-line center, I don't feel great about heading into the playoffs. That's just me. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
They said you guys were distracted. They said, Eric, you weren't going to be able to get enough rest. The emotions were going to be too much last week to be able to bounce back and get another win. That ain't us. That ain't us. Coach Lee has a specific script for us to follow. Coach Keel's, hard on us. And then up front, Coach K, he don't let the union slip at all.
Our house, we show you how to play some SEC ball. It don't matter where you're from. You're going to know what ball we play. Alabama, you're next.
Diego pop you for Heisman, man. Diego pop you for Heisman.
It is that time of the day, time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joseph, the floor is yours without further ado.
Thank you. So I was going to do this anyway. I got to credit my editor and, of course, Vanderbilt graduate Mitch Light, who brought this point up as we were talking. He's like, boy, notice how Vanderbilt did every possible interview last week, and then they won. I mean, let's go to last week. I mean, like I saw Pavia on Jim Rome,
Yep.
Dan Patrick. He's on like First Take or something. Like Johnny Manziel surprises him in an interview. He does every interview. Clark Lee, every interview. Whoever else they ask for. And what happened? Here's another part of this, and this is not he's not the point. But yesterday, driving back here from Bloomington, Indiana, I was like, oh, I got to hear some Stilly today. So I put my app in, listen to Stilly, and as soon as I play, he's talking about how, of course, he flipped out about all the of course, and Pavia had a podcast, and then I don't know, he still had some fake story about some coach said that like Pavia got mad because he called him the Hawk Tua. I don't even know.
I've seen the evidence on that one. It's legit.
It's legit that someone told Pavia that and he got mad.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that's funny. But still, the point is, of course, Stilly, and he's not far from alone, but this whole idea, and it's just this is a coaching belief, which is such BS. If we do these interviews and we talk about it's just going to be no. Vanderbilt, credit to them. Credit to Clark Lee and everybody over there. Soak in the moment. Go do the interviews, get all of the benefits of doing something like this for your program. And then when it's time to work, go to practice and practice.
Yeah.
Go to school. Like
multitask.
Again, so if you're doing a 10-minute interview, how is that any more detrimental than like playing video games in your dorm room? But somehow this is just, oh no, some of these coaches bunker up and, you can't talk to the players, can't talk to the assistants. Yeah, I'm kind of looking at you, Nick Saban. And hey, you know what? Nick Saban's way certainly worked. But, Nick Saban, he over time started locking down on these things because people would say stuff that he didn't like. And he's like, well, I'm just going to muzzle as many people as possible. But he and all these coaches use the excuse of, well, we can't have, Saban talks about the rat poison, but a lot of these coaches talk about, and not just talk about, but their actions are trying to keep it down. Let's not have people talk. Let's not have distractions. BS. Vanderbilt is Exhibit A that you can do all these things and you can still come out and handle your business. So I hope that other coaches took note of that. I know that some will bunker up no matter what, but like you can't deny what just happened here. They went on the road as, what were they, underdogs of how much?
13 and a half.
Yeah, 2 touchdown underdogs, and went and controlled a game and didn't trail one time and just kicked their butt. So thank you, Vanderbilt, for showing everyone what a farce that whole idea is.
I gotta raise my hand. I was concerned about it last week. I was concerned about the rat poison for Vanderbilt heading into the game. Maybe too much rat poison, but they handled it very well. Now, I will say, largely agree with your point. I think we have seen examples of teams that have kind of bought into that a little bit, and it has affected them. Vanderbilt showed the maturity where it did not affect them. I appreciate that.
So I'm not saying that a team can't get cocky or overlook an opponent. But what I am saying is, like, there are some coaches who in that moment would be like, no, this is not the week that we talk about this stuff. Yeah. We're just going to lock it down. No. Doing things like, talking about your program, talking about the game or whatever. I mean, having fun for a few minutes. I mean, when it all adds up to how much Pavia's time was taken up by media stuff last week.
Not a ton.
We added it all together, I mean, a segment, when we have a guest on here, it's about 11 minutes of your time, right?
Yeah.
10, 11 minutes of your time. So he did a few interviews, and he apparently did a podcast. And then Stilly, what? Talking about the Hawk Tua girl? Did he
start a podcast?
Talking about? Is that what it was? I don't know. I thought that's what Jared said yesterday.
I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't mind listening to the Diego Pavia podcast. He's an entertaining guy.
The podcast would be pretty good. I would be down with that too. But again, yes, of course, teams can get caught up in they think they're better than they are, stuff like that, right? But just the process of when you have a big moment for your program, going through some interviews about it, like how is that a problem?
Well, I said that last week. They should lean into it. Vanderbilt should lean into it, and they did. Now, by the end of the week, it was a natural question, and it was more than just the interviews, but it was, how do you handle success, right? Like we talked about that with Vanderbilt. How do you handle success? Because number one, you've not had a ton of it to speak of, And number two, we did see earlier in the season where they got off to a good start. They took down Virginia Tech. They throttled Alcorn State at home. And then they went on the road to Georgia State and lost the game. And you thought, all right, well, it's just the same old Vanderbilt. You lost a game that you had no business losing. And can you handle that moving forward? So I think that was kind of a fair question heading into last week's game. And to their credit, they handled it great. Like I thought they were totally in control of that game Saturday night against Kentucky. So I don't know if that's a lesson learned from earlier in the season or if it's just the way that it all played out that way and they've just continually gotten better as a football team. But I did think that was a question that I was curious to see whether or not they can answer to the affirmative, and they did on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, that's the thing. You're a pretty significant underdog on the road against an SEC team that kicked your butt in your home stadium a year ago, right?
Yep.
Versus everyone just assumes you're going to go beat this other team. And that's
Right.
human nature, but I promise you the Georgia State loss had nothing to do with an interview with the media.
No. I would promise you that's probably the case.
Still, he also said something. He had, I guess, Stephen A. Smith had some Mayo. He said something about Will Levis. We're rewarding me. So this still he tried to take oh, see, I told you I was right. Yes. The Mayo commercials are why Levis is struggling this year. That's totally great call.
Well, right now I'm just glad that he's done it because
exactly. Good
may
job.
not last very long.
Jump on that. Absolutely.
I don't know how many more commercial opportunities you keep playing football the way you are right now that you're going to get.
Mayo checks keep cashing. Stilly, Mayo takes continue to suck.
Hey, which take do you have a problem with more? The Stilly take on the Mayo stuff or Kuharski saying that the Titans must be out based on the game plan that they had on Levis?
I seriously cannot wait to yell at Kuharski. It's so dumb.
I can't wait either.
Like I just again, the only out he has is if this is like he has information internally that they are out on him, then okay, then it's kind of like you're trying to find signs of something that you have been told.
Right.
But if this is just what I think it is just like speculation, it's just what? It's so dumb.
I'm here for it. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into the Tennessee Titans coming up next. A trade opportunity that, according to Joe Rexrode, the Titans must consider. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. Taking your thoughts in the YouTube chat, which is flowing, and our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Titans are at 1-4. They got the Buffalo Bills on the road coming up, and then the Detroit Lions on the road as well. So that's not great for the Titans as we forecast what their record could be. Also, Joe, I was looking at this yesterday. Like, how many games left on the Titans schedule do you feel like pretty good, or at least like decent, about their chances to win? And my answer is not many. Like, there's both Jags games, obviously, that they should have a shot.
Patriots.
But even like, Minnesota we looked at before the year and was like, yeah, there's a good one. Well, I don't feel great about that one right now. Washington before the year. Hey, there's one. I don't feel great about that right now. There's not many left that I feel great about with the Titans.
No. I mean, first of all, again, I thought it would be tough with their schedule, just luck of the draw. This is an NFC North year, but I didn't think it'd be this tough. I mean, the Vikings are the big difference maker. They've already lost to Chicago in a game they should have won, but the Vikings are totally different. And I think maybe some reality may set in for the Vikings at some point, but I don't know.
What they're doing on defense right now, I don't know if that's going away. That's pretty good.
That defense against the Lions offense Sunday gonna be
gonna be
fun to watch. But no, they basically the Jags twice and the Pats.
Yeah,
like that's of course there's gonna be a win in there. That's like, huh? Yeah, like of course there will be. Yeah, and it might cost them a draft spot. But yeah, probably that's usually how it goes, right? But at this point, then I think and I can't even sit here and project them to win both Jags games, but I mean, like, they're probably right now, I'm thinking like 4-13 is probably about where they end up. 3-14 or 4-13, right?
Get excited.
Yeah.
Sounds fun. So in the meantime, we talked about this yesterday. If it continues to go this way, how much do you consider selling off if you're the Tennessee Titans and trying to take as best advantage as you can of the trade deadline for future assets? And you have a trade proposal that you believe the Titans may need to consider if things continue to go this way. What is said trade proposal?
Well, it's Harold Landry to the Lions. And the Lions, I believe, are going to be very aggressive because the Lions actually, they have a team that, is kind of looking like a legit team that can win this thing. But now they lose their best defensive player. I mean, flat out, Aiden Hutchinson has been the best pass rusher in the NFL this year, and he's gone awful. I haven't even seen the replay of the injury. I will not watch it, but I know gross. It's awful. And so broken tibia and fibula, and they're talking about him being back for the Super Bowl. But I mean, okay, but
be a tough one.
Yeah. In the meantime, they really don't have another edge rusher. They've got a decent defense and a great offense, but they have to have edge rushing. And so I think they're going to be aggressive. I know there's, Max Crosby's out there. There are lower cost alternatives, but I mean, the question on the Titans side of this is because look, I think things are going to progress to the point they're going to be 1-6. And then I think, it's going to be they're going to be a team that's heavily looked at. People are just coming over to the Titans yard sale and just, probably inquiring about Simmons too, potentially, certainly DeAndre Hopkins, because he's the more traditional sort of rental player that you would get. Harold Landry. Yeah, it's the hard part about making a move like that would be I could still make the case. I know some will laugh at me right now, but I could still make the case that the Titans figure out quarterback and they figure out right tackle and they figure out another edge rusher to go with Landry. Like that's a lot, but that's three things. And so next year's team, you could take a pretty big jump in competitiveness. And Landry is absolute pro, consummate pro, incredible performance last year off an ACL to me, what he did. He is an Iron Man of a player.
Yeah.
Do you want to me, it comes down to how desperate the Lions are, how much they like him and how much you're getting. It has to be a big return, but I think you have to, when you see a team that's a true contender that desperately loses someone that they have no other alternative and they desperately need help at that spot, then I think you have to engage in the conversation about and talk big compensation. And these GMs we previously worked with each other as well, so I think that this is something that could materialize as a real thing.
I don't hate that. I had not thought about the Landry part of this, just in terms of potential trade pieces. But it's interesting to think about because, like, if you're going to start selling off at the trade deadline, if you're the Titans, yes, you're trying to acquire as many picks as possible in terms of just the quantity of it. You also need more quality picks. And quite frankly, I'm looking at their roster right now, Joe, and how many tradable assets do they have that would bring back a big return? Like, I don't think the answer is very many. Now, Landry could be one of those. Simmons definitely could be one of those too. Now, how willing are the Titans to actually engage in those conversations with Jeffrey Simmons? I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. But the point is, obviously, with where they're at with their roster, there's not a ton of guys on their team right now that are going to generate big returns at the trade deadline. And we've talked about this too in the NFL. The NFL does not have a very active deadline. It's not like hockey. It's not like certainly basketball that, things change dramatically with teams at the deadline. That doesn't happen very often in the NFL. But when you do have circumstances like this, where there is a team that's clearly a contender, that clearly has a big need, and you are one of several teams, but are one of those teams, if you're the Titans, that has a player that can fill that need, then I think it's at least something that you need to talk about if you're Rand Carthon and the Titans. And I think also, Joe, not to get too far deep into the weeds of next year, but like, what's the plan at quarterback? If Levis continues on this trajectory and it becomes clear to everyone, not just me and a lot of the fan base right now, that he's not the guy, well, what's the plan to address that next year? Is it the draft? Is it going out and signing a veteran free agent, whoever that might be, whether it's, I don't know, if Sam Darnold breaks loose, going going that route? Because I think your plan at quarterback also influences how quickly you think the timeline might be with some of these guys. I mean, Landry's 28 years old. He's still playing good football. Do you feel like he could still be a part of your solution whenever you get on the other side of this? There's a lot that goes into it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you move him, and obviously, that helps your cap situation. The cap, it's real. But also, you now have a total void. I mean, I know Arden Key's here, but
yeah, it's not going well.
So that's the thing. The NFL, you just, it's like, I mean, you have to have some good football players, right? And you have to have some. I mean, like, this is certainly a year of testing the culture. I promise you, one guy who is a positive force in the culture is Harold Landry.
Yeah.
And again, to me, consummate pro, and that's a lot to ask. Like, Jeffrey Simmons is a guy that they push forward as the star and leader and all that stuff, and he's a fiery guy. But, there's also problems with that, as we've seen. Harold Landry, to me, is more of he's not a vocal guy or any of that stuff, but like more of this is how you become a great player. Do what that guy does. But I have an answer for you on the quarterback situation.
Okay.
And that is part of this trade as well.
Okay.
So, first of all, the Lions, the first-round pick has to be the 2025 first-round pick of the Lions, which is not going to be a high pick.
I think I know where you may be going.
Has to be part of this. And then you're swapping QB2s.
Wow.
You're sending them Mason Rudolph, so they have a backup, and then you are bringing Hendon Hooker back here, and all the slaps to all the faces of all the Vols fans are now removed from the equation. Seriously, send us, if I'm the Titans, I want Hendon Hooker, and we said it. I still believe it. During the draft process, I believe Hendon Hooker is going to end up being a better NFL quarterback than Will Levis. He just hasn't had a chance. He's now as healthy. And the Lions just signed Jared Goff to a huge number.
Yep.
And he's going to be the guy there. So it's an opportunity for Hooker. I think, to me, it's Hooker and either a rookie or a veteran competing next year. It's not like you're all full on committing to Hendon Hooker, but then you have a promising young QB who hasn't had his chance to show what he has, along with at least a first-round pick, if not like a first and a fourth.
Well, how about that? Look at you.
That's my trade.
Look at you putting together. Now, the interesting too, let's say this happens and Landry's gone. Well, then your task, if you're the Titans, also with, you already need one edge rusher, and now you got to go find another one, right? So you're trying to find two edge rushers there. Now you're hoping the compensation that you get back would help you do that. Like Maddie on the text line, what would a big compensation for Landry look like? Is it a second round pick? Would that be too high? Would the Lions be willing to do that? And also, like, if you are getting back Hendon Hooker in your proposed trade, how does that affect what the price would look like for Landry that the Lions are giving up to begin with? All very interesting questions.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, there's a lot. It may be that in that building, Landry's just a non-starter because of, again, like that edge void. I mean, to me, well, when we thought is earlier in the year when it's like, well, Levis will probably at least be the QB next year, then it's like, well, the edge is clearly what they're going to do, right? Even though they have Landry, because you have to have more there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to totally start over there, that's a lot, It's a really important part of having a competitive football team. And, this team with Simmons and Sweat in there, like, you got to support that with players on the edge who can make plays. All right, what did somebody say?
No, I'm thinking about this idea, and it's good. Now, Maddie did say you love that trade. Draft Pavia in the 5th round, and all Tennessee SEC fans' minds are blown. Have Hooker coming here, QB1, Pavia, QB2. Let them battle it out in camp. How about that?
God, I love it. God, Pavia, man.
Some dogs.
I mean, the whole thing with Pavia is going to be, it's going to be fascinating. I don't think he's an NFL quarterback. And I hope I am the dumbest hater of all time for thinking
somebody's going to play that for him this week.
Yeah.
As he's preparing for Ball State.
On a loop. But he's an NFL something. I mean, seriously, make him commissioner. I don't know. He's an NFL something.
I love that guy. 615-737-1025, our phone number. So what do you make of Rexrode's trade proposal for the Titans? Harold Landry to the Detroit Lions, and as a part of a trade, you swap backup quarterbacks. Mason Rudolph to Detroit, Hendon Hooker to the Titans. We'll take your reaction to all that. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We will have Preds Pick to Click coming up later this hour at 8:45. Which Preds player do you think will score a goal in tonight's game? Be ready to call at 8:45. If you guess a goal scorer tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We will do that coming up at 8:45 today on the program. Rexrode has thrown the trade proposal out there.
It's brilliant.
Harold Landry to the Detroit Lions after they lost Aiden Hutchinson on Sunday. And as a part of the package, you get whatever the pick is back for Harold Landry, and you send Mason Rudolph to Detroit to be their QB2 behind Goff, an experienced guy, and Hendon Hooker comes back the other way. A lot of reaction to that on our text line. We'll continue to take it. Coy in Clarksville asking, can't we send Levis instead of Rudolph? I don't think the Lions would be interested in that. I think the appeal to the Lions with Rudolph would be, this is a guy that's been a backup for a while. He's come in, he's won some games, and Hendon Hooker we like, but he does not have the experience that Mason Rudolph brings to the table.
Yeah. I mean, Levis is pretty hard to trade at this point. Like,
I would say so.
You know, and again, the Lions took a flyer on Hooker in the third round, and then Goff has just been tremendous. I will say, as Tom Brady pointed out, and Tom Brady's getting better, by the way. He's not terrible. But as he pointed out, he must have said 6 to 8 different ways, man, look at this protection and running game, making things easy on Jared Goff and wide open receivers. But Goff has played great. He's going to be the future there. And so to me, it's like, why not bring in a safe, like, you know, a solid game manager who could get you through a couple games if needed, as opposed to the young guy who, you know, you're trying to develop, but like it's going to be a while on Hendon Hooker. Titans could give him an opportunity earlier. I think it makes sense. You know, Landry, first of all, from the Lions perspective, also, of course, they would have to look at this like, I mean, they have to make the money work.
Right.
You're talking about, I mean, Landry's cap hit in the next 3 years is 24, basically. And you know, tops on the Titans. So he's under contract through 26. But I could see the Lions also looking at like, well, if Aaron Glenn thinks he fits in the scheme and all that stuff, Landry, and then you get back Hutchinson next year. Okay. Now
pretty good duo.
With everything else, that's a pretty good duo. And you know, and then for this, but the desperation is this year needing to not waste that team. And this is where the Titans need to try to take, and other teams will too. We'll try to take advantage of that and say, okay, but it's going to cost you for player X.
Now, part of this is also not that you can totally operate this way, but like if you're going to sell, then you need to be committed to doing it, right? Because what you don't want to do is just dance around and just say, well, we're not sure we're out of it yet. We're not sure we're out of it yet. We're not sure we're out of it yet. And then all of a sudden the opportunity's gone and somebody else makes the move. Now, you know, you brought up Crosby. You know, there's a lot of people that think that the Max Crosby relationship with Vegas is going south.
He's out there shoving coaches.
He's out there shoving. Now, he did say that was a love shove, whatever that means. But he's out there shoving coaches, and that maybe that they're realizing what I think all of us probably know is that ownership is the problem with the Vegas Raiders, and that it may not be getting any better anytime soon. So does he eventually just force his way out and demand a trade that way? The Lions would make a lot of sense there. Like, it's hard to imagine, regardless if it's the Titans, if it's the Raiders, whoever. Detroit has to do something. Like, they've got a team that is good enough to win the Super Bowl. There's only, as we know in the NFL, unless you've got Mahomes and Andy Reid, it's hard to extend a window that long. So when you've got an opportunity to win it, you got to be all in and you got to go try to win it. I would be stunned if Detroit doesn't try to make a big move of some degree when it comes to helping out a edge rusher.
Yeah, no, I think they have to, and I think they will. Kevin brings up a great point in the text line driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com. Says, if we're going to start trading assets, might as well know we're going to suck till the next regime. This group hasn't shown they can draft any better than the last franchise. I propose we trade Amy Adams. Okay. For an AI-generated owner. Okay. But to your first point, I agree. That's the thing. It's like, okay, so if you're Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and you're willing to do this, I mean, to me, that's also willing. I mean, it means you're willing to take a step back. I mean, you have to have a pretty short-term plan for success.
Yeah.
I mean, also, on my drive, listen to Still, of course, he's talking about, well, I wouldn't fire him now, but at the end of the year, sure, of course you're firing him. Okay, well, You're just going to keep firing people and just start over and start over and start over. I mean, you have to give people a chance. Like, I disagree with you, Kevin. Like, they haven't shown they can draft any better. I like this draft right now. I like this draft class. I mean, its early returns are pretty good, but they still, like, it can't be too long. It's a pretty short term. So if you have to have success pretty soon, and then you're going to trade away one of your best football players, and yeah, you're bringing in picks and all that stuff, but okay, how does that pay off in winning? How soon? Because you can't go 4-13 and then next year, improved to 6-11. At some point, it gets the seats get hot, and that's where I question whether the Titans would be willing to part with someone like Landry. But people talk about trading Simmons. Well, in this situation, that's not what the Lions need.
Exactly.
I mean, the Lions are desperate for an edge rusher.
Correct.
Desperate.
Well, they've got to have one. And again, whether it's the Titans or somebody else, I think that's a move that they're going to make. Let's go back to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
What's up, Robby and Joe? Hey, man, so do you think – I know you guys have a pretty a wide cache of football memories here. So do you think it's possible that there is a bigger fraudulent debut in the NFL than what Will Levis had? I've been thinking about this. I know Marcus threw like 5 touchdowns against the Bucs in a half. I don't think he was trash, though. I just don't think he was a great starter. But I think Levis is like the hottest of hot garbage. But he tricked us all, dude. I don't know. That's what I was riding dying with Levis, man. I was into the mayonnaise thing and the banana thing. I was supporting how goofy he was because I'm like, this dude's got it, man. He just not got it. That was all fraudulent. I wonder if there's ever been anybody that's come out so incredibly hot for a game and tricked everybody because they suck.
Well, thanks for calling. I mean, I could think of a couple Titans quarterbacks, right? Like Marcus looked great early on.
Mm-hmm.
Vince won Rookie of the Year. I know it's more than one game that you're talking about there, but Vince Young was Rookie of the Year, and I thought the Titans might have a Hall of Famer on their hands when he started playing quarterback.
Yeah, I did too. I was all in on Vince Young, man, and Mariota. Mariota played some pretty good football for like multiple years. Not great, it wasn't good enough, but like Levis.
This happens in the league, though. A lot of times it's for different reasons. And quite frankly, a lot of times injury ends up being a big part of it. But look at RG3, right? Like RG3 was unbelievable his rookie year. And I know injuries were the main story with him, but he did play football after those injuries and never approached being what he was before that. So we do see this happen in the National Football League.
It happens. And again, it's with Levis, it's like, yes, the first game was like this fever dream, just throwing up bombs for touchdowns. And the Miami 2-minute, the fourth quarter was fantastic. It's not a lot. It's not nearly as much as some of the, like you said. I mean, Vince Young
won games.
Yeah.
By himself.
Exactly. Yeah. Like and I absolutely thought he was going to be great. Someone mentioned Jake Locker. So I had a text, but the text line is flying on this one. So I hope you all like the idea. But
that's why it says Ryan Leaf. Did Ryan Leaf have a good NFL debut? I don't remember what Ryan Leaf's NFL debut
No,
was.
I think Ryan Leaf was, he won some games as a rookie, but I mean, it was pretty rough pretty quickly for him. I mean, but you're talking about just the hype for him. And that's also what's different here. Like someone's yelling at me about Hooker, like it's an asinine idea. Again, I'm not saying Hendon Hooker, yes, you are the quarterback of the future. I'm saying he would come in and be your backup this year. Maybe at some point he would. I mean, I know Brian Summers says Levis is QB2 already, but at some point could get out there and play and then could be a potential competitor next year. I think Hendon Hooker is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I've never not thought that. I've never not thought it. I watched him play 2 years ago, and it was consistent excellence. And I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. So until he proves me wrong, I'm going to continue to think that.
What a turnabout
he has a
for
chance.
Vols fans. What a redemption story it could be for the Tennessee fans who were slapped in the face. They took Levis.
It's like going back in time and all the slaps, like shoo, coming away from the face. Just a big hug. Just a big Vol hug.
615-737-1025. More reaction to the trade proposal that Rexrode has thrown out there. Titans trading Harold Landry to the Detroit Lions. A part of the package being Rudolph to Detroit, Hendon Hooker back to Nashville. What do you make of that? 615-737-1025. More on that next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Got some tickets to give away to see the Nashville Predators take on Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Matthias Ekholm, and the Edmonton Oilers at Bridgestone Arena this Thursday night. Be caller 5, 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. Caller 5 will win a pair of tickets to see the Preds take on the Oilers coming up on Thursday at Bridgestone Arena. Rexrode has thrown out a trade proposal for the Titans to the Detroit Lions. Harold Landry and Mason Rudolph as a part of the package back, what I assume would be a draft pick of some kind, and Hendon Hooker coming back to the Tennessee Titans.
A first and something else, like a first and a fourth, and then the Hooker Rudolph swap.
You think you could get that much for Harold Landry?
Yeah, I think it, a lot of it would come down to the Lions, what else the Lions are looking at. As someone pointed out, Diana Rossini just reported Hassan Reddick has given the Jets permission to seek a trade.
How you feeling about that right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's just costing himself money left and right. I don't know. But he's obviously he could be an answer. Like, think about how different some of these players are. Like Hassan Reddick and Harold Landry are not, like, they're very different players.
Yes.
What kind of play? Hutchinson is kind of like, he's more of he's more of like a defensive end kind of rusher than he is like an outside linebacker like Landry, so in that scheme, do they want someone a little bit bigger and less, because Landry's obviously a versatile guy, can play in space, things like that. He's not the brawny, like Hutchinson's like an old school, like 4-3 defensive end kind of guy. Like Reddick is a bigger, more physical guy. Like, what do they value there? But if it comes down to like the rest of the market is dry, nothing out there looks great, and they know they have to do something. They have to do something desperately. I mean, I think it's possible. Again, they have to also be committed to, yes, not only is this potentially the answer and enough to help this team possibly make a run, but yeah, for the next few years, Landry and Hutchinson together, perfect. They'd have to love that. And again, I have my doubts. My bigger doubt on this is the Titans' view in terms of, so you need to win pretty soon, and you're now going to get rid of one of your best football players. How's that work?
It is very interesting, but it also comes down to, in this discussion that I'm trying to avoid as long as possible, but it's getting harder to avoid with each week that goes by.
Yeah.
Like, again, if you're doing this, I think you're also signaling that you don't believe in Will Levis anymore. And then what's your answer at quarterback after that? Like, what's your evaluation of Hooker, right? Like, these guys, I would assume, had an evaluation on Hendon Hooker just like they did Will Levis, right? I mean, he was in the same draft. So I would assume they've got a baseline of information on Hendon Hooker and what they like about him, what they don't like him. Is that a realistic interest for Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and the Tennessee Titans? And if it's not, like, what's your answer at quarterback after that? Because you can create we've talked about the hole you create if Landry's gone and you got to find 2 edge rushers instead of 1, and they're having a hard enough time finding 1 right now. I get all that, but none of it really matters if you don't have a quarterback. Like, that is objective number 1 for this franchise. You have to find one.
Right. So with Hooker coming in, what would happen to me this year is Hooker comes in. For this year, he's the backup, and it takes away the, whatever, the locker. Like, we know Rudolph could win games. Someone texted, like, there's whispers in the locker room about, like, I don't think there's whispers. There's screaming around town that Levis is not playing well, right? And that Rudolph probably give him a better chance to win. You take Rudolph out of the equation, Hooker can come in. They can evaluate him during practice. Levis gets the rest of the year, probably.
I don't know. Well, if I'm bringing Hooker in, I'd like to see him play.
Yeah, maybe later in the year. But, like, you're not instantly coming. Now he's coming into a new offense and everything. Like, you have more time now where there's not really a QB controversy. Levis just plays, and you see what you see. And then, you could go a number of ways. But to me, Hooker would probably be at least a competitor next year with either your draft pick, because you're going to draft in the top 5 probably.
Yep.
Or with, if you decide, nope, it's got to be a veteran QB. And then, you've taken Landry off the books. So, that opens up some cap space. and then you sign a veteran QB and you let them compete and you use that top 5 pick on an edge rusher or whatever.
Let me ask you this, and this is partially maybe in some degree living in fantasy land, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. Calvin Ridley clearly pretty frustrated, right? Like we talked about that yesterday and the outburst after the game, and he's got 27 targets and 9 catches, so he should be frustrated. What if it doesn't get any better in the next few weeks here, and he comes up to you and says, I didn't sign up for this. I want out. I mean, you're under no obligation to comply with that if you're the Titans, and you just paid him money to be your number 1 wide receiver. But if he does that, like, what's your response if you're the Titans at that point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we could throw anybody here into the mix as a possibility. It's just, I just, you look at what he's done, and then last year, disappointed to some extent. Again, you can blame different parties, but overall, it hasn't been that great. And so now he just signed this deal. Who out there wants to take that deal on right now? For a guy who has 9 catches.
I don't think the list would be long,
So,
but I do think you could also, if you're another team, look at it and say, all right, well, we've seen this guy be productive before, and he's got Will Levis throwing him the ball. Like, you could view it that way from the outside.
Yeah, you could. That one would that to me would be a tough sell. Another thing on this, if you did something like this, like if you did this, then that to me, again, like this front office doesn't have forever to win.
Right.
They don't. I think the draft class right now looks pretty promising, but the draft class before does not.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the veteran QB is a much more likely scenario. Someone who's proven, who has demonstrated the ability to play at a decently high level in this league, so that you can win next year. And again, you trade one of your best football players, makes it harder to win next year. But if you're also now bringing in a rookie to like compete with Hendon Hooker, again, I've just created this entire fantasy scenario for you all,
which
is
is very popular on the text
play
line,
my
by the way.
Ewok village.
Yes,
but I that's just, you're asking for too much time then.
Yeah,
to
I would
me.
agree.
You can't. So this move to me would then be followed by, you have to go get the best possible QB on the market in the offseason.
I would agree with that. And then the question becomes like, so what do you do with Hooker? Like, because to me, if you're part of you doing this, has to involve your belief that maybe he could turn into your long-term quarterback at some point.
Well, what you hope is, now that he's totally past the knee, he's been working in a really good offense with a really good OC up there, and he's ready to come in and really make a run at it. And there's nothing wrong with actually having it. Doesn't happen too often in the NFL, but there's nothing wrong with an actual competition for a spot that should raise the level of the two people competing for the spot. You hope that he is ready for that. And I still believe that dude is at some point going to emerge in this league and play
It's
well.
not going to be in Detroit. Like, I mean, barring injury with Jared Goff.
Barring injury,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
Not anytime soon.
I wonder, but I mean, it could also be a situation where Dan Campbell and the Lions look at it and they say, you know what? We really like Hendon Hooker and we like what we're seeing from him in practice, and we'd like to have him around for a while. Like, it could be as simple as that. I don't know. I think it's a very intriguing scenario that you've come up with here, that should that situation present itself, I think you got to give it a lot of thought if you're the Titans at that point. It's a very popular idea you've got on the text line.
Caleb just says, how realistic is this? I said, not very. But by golly, let's have some fun.
David says, you don't think they'll trade for Russell Wilson, do you?
Yeah, someone mentioned that yesterday. Threw that out there. Trading for, yeah, I don't. I think he's kind of washed.
Yeah.
I think he's pretty close to washed.
I don't really
here.
know what that
and the
is.
fact that, I mean, I don't know. Where is he? I mean, he's supposed to be healthy or pretty close to it now, right? Or maybe like this week he's supposed to be able. I wouldn't move on from Justin Fields. You're winning with Justin Fields.
Chuck says, Hendon Hooker's like 80. What long term are you talking about? He's 26 years old.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it's a little older for a guy that was just drafted a couple years ago, but
I mean, Cam Rising from Utah's gonna be an 8th year
he's
senior
not
next
45. Year. He's 26.
Yeah, it's fine. If you
by the way, Will Levis is 25. It's not like he's that much older than Will Levis.
Exactly. Like basically, you should feel really good about someone going to their mid-30s, if not the late 30s, but certainly to the mid-30s. So then
If they're good enough, yeah.
Right. You have darn near a decade. That's fine.
Yeah, you'll take that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Coming up next, it's time for Pred's Pick to Click. Be the first caller at 615-737-1025. If you guess a goal scorer for tonight's Preds game, you win a pair of tickets to the future Nashville Predators home game. We will do that coming up next. Take your final thoughts on Rexrode's trade proposal as well. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
It's time for Pred's Picks to Click.
And a shot of the score.
Do you think you know who will score a goal in tonight's Predators game?
Little give and go.
Shoot your shot for a chance to win Preds tickets. Call 615-737-1025 now. It's Pick to Click, now on Robby and Rexrode.
It is time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Seattle Kraken. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, pregame 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 the game. Preds looking for win number one. A standings update, the competition. Paul Kuharski in for Rexrode last week on opening night. Gets on the board with Philip Forsberg as his selection, which means Joe Rexrode, technically Paul Kuharski, up 1-0 in the competition. The listeners not on the board. Nick Keyser, myself, not on the board. So congratulations, Joe. Kuharski's gotten you a lead in the competition.
He's better at picking hockey goal scorers and coming up with football storylines.
With that in mind, let's go to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Jeremy. Jeremy, good morning. Thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click tonight for the Nashville Predators?
I'm going to go with Ryan O'Reilly.
Ryan O'Reilly. Jeremy, thanks for the call. O'Reilly, the selection by Jeremy. Nick Keyser, you're up first after the listener in today's competition. O'Reilly is off the board. Your pick to click for the Nashville Predators.
Prince Philip of Forsberg. I think we'll get it done tonight and score in front of the fans yet again.
Philip Forsberg, the selection. Give me Steven Stamkos. He gets the first one tonight. First one as a member of the Predators. And I will double down. It comes on the power play. Stamkos tonight on the power play. Joe Rexrode, your selection, and Preds pick to click.
Good, suckers. How about Cole Smith?
Yes.
For the win. Easy.
Cole
Easy money.
Smith.
Second line that
forward.
The first pick, too. Cole Smith, top six forward. I mean, we just haven't seen this guy have an opportunity to skate with guys like Stamkos and Marchessault.
That's true. We
just
haven't.
wait till the offensive waterfall begins tonight.
I've never been more excited to hopefully be proven wrong on this. I hope you win tonight.
Oh,
I really
do.
do.
Thank you.
I just want to see the meltdown that takes place when Cole Smith has a hat trick tonight.
Yeah, what are all you haters going to say? I mean, God,
a lot of haters on the text line.
Cole Smith,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, who does he? We've said before that he's the NWI, right?
Yes,
but it's worse than that. And people actually love NWI now.
Yeah,
will they at some point love Cole Smith
tonight when he scores a hat trick? They will love him. Yes,
I hope so.
Yeah. Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, Steven Stamkos, Cole Smith. What a combination that is. The players selected in Preds pick to click tonight for the Predators as they take on the Seattle Kraken. More of your thoughts right now on our text line to Joe's trade proposal that he threw out there. I got one texter that says, our fan base seems to think NFL quarterbacks have the lifespan of a tennis pro. 26 to 35 are the prime years for a quarterback, and more guys are making the 35 to 40 age range work as well. This is from an unnamed texter. I like that.
Yeah, the age thing right now that's a weird one.
One texter says Hendon Hooker's nearly 28 years old. It's like he's 26. He's not nearly 28. He is legitimately 26.
He's only like 14 years from 40, man.
Like,
I don't know.
I mean, I don't care if he's only a good quarterback for the next 5 years. Like when you sign up for that right now, based on what's happening.
For the Titans, if you can get a 2-year quarterback, jump on it. Santa in Portland says, are there any teams who are contenders to the Super Bowl who would need a wide receiver one? Well, I mean, look,
Kansas City.
I think Hopkins to Kansas City is absolutely a thing that also should be. That's a much more realistic trade than the one I threw out today. Now, again, people talking about Ridley. I'm really dubious about Ridley being of interest to teams out there at this moment.
I would agree. I'm just saying, I wonder what the response is. Like, he's clearly frustrated.
Very.
And we see that sometimes boil over with wide receivers where they do this and they say, I want out. It seems like it's pretty early for that. We'll see what happens, but I'm not going to discount that as a possibility from his end. I have no idea what the response of the Titans would be. My response would probably be like, hey, why don't you worry about catching the ball when it's thrown your way, and we can worry about all the other stuff after that.
Yeah, look, you lose like this, and especially if you're losing and you're not producing, you're going to be unhappy. I totally get it. I think a lot of it's not on him. Some is on him, but there's also, like, again, with this front office. So if you were like Rand Carthon moving him after signing him to that deal, what are you saying about your own, vision for the team, right?
Yep. Justin from Greenbrier says, this does all hinge on if we trust the current Titans front office to get the draft right also.
Well,
they could do this trade and go for a right tackle and edge rusher within the first 2 picks.
Yeah, again, this is like a few years ago, and I was like, I don't want to pick because J. Rob will screw it up. I'm like, well, then fire him. Well, they did finally. But, like, if you have a GM in this league and you're getting draft picks, yep, that's who's going to make the picks.
Yep.
So, I mean, you will take picks, and then you hope you make good picks. Again, I know it's not popular to like defend Brian Callahan as I did earlier against Paul Kaharski's weird line of questioning, or to suggest that this front office actually had a pretty good last draft. But I mean, that's how I look at it right now. I think it's a pretty good draft class.
Well, and again, diving into draft talk territory that I'm trying not to get into, but continue to get into.
Oh boy.
This is another example of why, like, they really needed Will Levis to work out and still need the quarterback to work out, because there are so many other holes on the team that they have to fill via the draft.
Yeah.
That if you have to spend time now again trying to go find a quarterback, that's just eating up a spot somewhere else. And I get it. Like, you got to do it. Like, if Levis isn't good, you got to go find a quarterback, whether it's in the draft or free agency. So it's the most important thing. But it would be great for the quarterback to work out, so then you could go find an edge rusher, and you could go find another young wide receiver, and you could go find a right tackle. And then you could be in a scenario again where you look at the offseason coming up and say, man, they sure do have a lot of holes to fill. How do you do it in one offseason if you're the Titans?
Yeah, I mean, if Corey Levin, if Levis
Levin
doesn't
bread.
Yeah, there you go. Getting biblical on the show.
Yes.
If Levis doesn't take a hard, left turn here soon, then yeah, it's just your plan is you just have to alter everything. And so that's where you get these two games. You got Buffalo and Detroit on the road, and he's going to get opportunities still, and he should. And all right, what happened?
You got a texture that says, I would trust Benedict Arnold before I trust his Titans front office.
Wow.
Jeez.
Going all-time, traitors in U.S. history.
Yes.
And the Titans front office. Okay.
I just didn't expect that one on the text line. That was good.
Yeah, we got biblical references, historical references.
Very educational on this show.
Yeah. Now look, this is the front office, so you have to let them do their job, don't you?
You do.
Good luck.
That's going to do it for us today on the program. I really like your trade proposal.
Thank
the
you.
more I think about it, I think you're a genius. I think we'll continue that discussion.
I've always thought so.
Tomorrow. Jason Big Joe coming up next. Listen to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.